Hello my friends and welcome back. Second video of the week from Minneapolis, United States. And actually today we're going on a plane and we're gonna fly to Salt Lake City, which is almost the last stop in the US, because after that we're going back to New York for a few days before we head back to Europe. It has been an amazing trip and I've been able to make videos for you, making these Ukrainian war summaries. And today we begin with, in my eyes, very good news. It's about Russian oil refining capacity. You know, Russia has exactly 44 oil refineries, and their capacity is 7 million barrels of oil per day to be refined. Now, out of that capacity, they do not use about 1 million barrels per day. So some of the refineries are sitting idle. Now, how is it connected? Well, because Ukraine sent drones to Moscow, the capital of Russia, to attack Gazprom oil refinery, which supplies almost half of Moscow with fuel. And this refinery went up in a magnificent way in flames. Demilitarized, knocked out cold, sent to meet with its maker, whichever thing you want to use for it, it doesn't work anymore. The refinery that went up in flames is called Gazprom Neft, and it's Gazprom's oil arm, and it is responsible for a huge part. Gazprom is most of the Russian oil export, and refined oil products export is done through Gazprom. And what Ukraine is doing, even 1,000 kilometers into Russian territory, they're focusing down on Russian export capacities on fossil fuels. Not coal, they cannot touch coal, of course, but oil refineries are incredibly easy to attack. Oil refineries have these huge, you've definitely seen them, these huge oil silos that are filled with very flammable materials. And I asked some experts in the recent visit to Canada, Heiner, I asked him, he told me that these silos don't need much more than 2.5 kilograms of explosive, which is close to like 1 gallon, 0.8 gallons of explosives. And this is usually the same amount that the smallest Kamikaz drone in Ukraine is using. So what Ukraine does is build these extremely high range fixed wing drones with not the biggest amount of explosives on it, but they're really precise. They focus them down onto the fuel silos and boom, the combustion material inside the silo does the rest of the work. It's really hard, almost impossible to put out until it burns to the ground, and it spews hot fuel everywhere, meters, hundreds of meters away. The air is really hot, so it destroys everything around it. So destroying oil refineries is incredibly easy, and Ukraine is doing that, and it costs Russia a lot of money because the oil exports still bring in tens of millions per day to Russia, and each refinery knocked out cold takes millions away from the daily revenues. It's a great strategy, and we all see Ukraine is doing it. It is not officially launched. Ukrainian officers have not officially confirmed that strategy, but we see day after day Ukraine focusing down oil refineries like the one yesterday in Moscow, Gazprom Neft. Now my friends, because the world cannot be all serious and work, I want to give you some eye candy, something to laugh over. So this is a Russian troops right now in a building trying to launch a Kamikaz drone. I don't want to share this footage with you to see how it goes. And the guy already said something, Давай, Lyocha, which is let's go, Lyocha, Alexander, Lyocha. So famous last words in Russian, Давай, Lyocha, let's go, Lyocha. Let's see how it goes, Lyocha. Alright, it is armed, ready to go. Раз, два. Boom! You see, it immediately fell down on their own troops. And when you see they launch it, listen carefully, I will translate it to you. He let it go, he went down, he knew on this moment he screwed up, and somebody said, Blyat, which means the F word in English, and then kaboom! Drone was knocked out cold, and some of their friends possibly also. Of course, this is just a funny video of one failure. Actually, I do have to give credit to the Russian Kamikaz drone operations because they have almost the exact level of capacity than the Ukrainians. Ukraine is leading with about 2 months of research and development and new capabilities, but Russia is very close behind. So this video definitely does not describe the overall Russian Kamikaz drone capabilities. It's just one funny instance. I don't want to give you the wrong idea here. My friends, good news come from the United States Senate, and I know before I even go on with this commentary, you guys watching from the US, and I'm in the US right now, you're immediately like, okay, the House will block it. I know they will, but still I want to enjoy this moment for a for a second, I'm gonna share it with you. The United States Senate moves forward on a $95 billion foreign aid package. Senators vote 66 for and 33 against, exceeding 60 vote margin to send bill to Republican-led House. And yes, it says it all. The House is Republican-led. It passed the Senate, but the House probably will block it. I know how it goes. But feel free to comment it anyway. There is a very, very, very tiny chance of hope that the House will pass it, but I'm a realist. I have no illusions about it. I know the House will block it. But at least it went through the Senate. I'm glad about that. Now, in my eyes, how much I've spoke to senators and MPs, members of parliament in Canada, I've spoken to some people in the US, as much as I know about it, everybody is pro-Ukraine. The Republicans and the Democrats. It's a United States internal politics game before the election and connected to the border security. I know how it goes. I listen to a lot of people explaining it to me here. I'm aware of the internal games and how this Ukraine support is now tied up to the southern border security and all of that stuff. I support Ukraine. I'm from Estonia. I don't have a choice to play these games because it's my country, my land, my people. We will die if Ukraine loses. So I will continue doing my work. And I do hope the United States, you guys, if you're watching from the US, you get your house in order and the elections pass, and then we can move on with supporting the free world. But now, my friends, I have another type of candy. It's not eye candy, but it's more ear candy because it's a Russian Telegram post and I will read it to you in English. But I have a very good point at the end of this. It's about Ukrainian drone capabilities. And as I said, Ukrainians are about 2 months ahead in R&D and they will come out with a new drone 2 months before the Russians do. And then there's a 2-month window, a vacuum where Russians don't know what to do. And then they develop defensive capabilities against that drone. And then Ukrainians again have to make a new drone. That's how it goes. 2 months, one side and another side reacts. Now I'll read you a comment and it's connected to what I do in Ukraine. It's from a Russian Telegram channel. Guys, the Ukrainian armed forces no longer have drones, but planes. All the stuffing is from FPV. The only difference is that this is an airplane. It has one motor and this canned thing turns the camera forward, backward, down. It's impossible to shoot down in the photo. It's completely riddled, but it doesn't care. The drone keeps flying. It flies low, somewhere around 150 meters, so extremely low. The crowd was just running around it. Well, the drone twitched and just flew further. There were 5 pieces at a time. Well, this is the second day we have been flying. The first day there were 5 pieces. The second day turns around and dives into a Kamikaz truck, a Russian logistics truck. Well, slower than an FPV. But if a Kamikaz truck like ours stops near a store, well, that's it. It's screwed. Most likely, guys, they will be there soon in other directions. Be prepared. Flies slower than an FPV, but can wait a long time for the target. So it can loiter in the air for a long time. The Ukrops set up a repeater on the territory and fly to our rear without any problems. You need to hit the head. Then there are chances of shooting it down because the head is explosive. And you know what he's talking about. I have an eye candy for you. He's talking about a fixed wing kamikaze drone that can loiter up in the air with a repeater. And I know for a fact that it's not a repeater tower. It's a repeater relay drone up in the air for the Ukrainians. So this is the operator. Up in the air is a repeater drone, about a few clicks into Russian territory. The repeater drone sends the repeated and enhanced signal to the Kamikaz drone, which is like 25-30 clicks into the Russian rear. And that drone loiters in the air for a long time, waiting for a target. And then it dives into it, eliminating everything in its path. You know why I know this stuff? Well, I have a little video for you, my friends. Check it out. My friends, Christmas is over and you guys wanted presents for Ukrainian units and you wanted presents also for Russian units, and we are here to deliver. As you can see, the fundraiser was extremely successful and you can see the outcome of it behind me and in front of me. The guys you see around me, they are responsible for a big portion of these videos you see online where drones are demilitarizing Russian occupiers. And we are here and you guys actually made it possible for them to do their job even more effectively. This here, my friends, is Alex Kinnish.
Good to see you, Artur. The campaign was so successful, Artur. We sold over 800 of the Vapnik Slayer patches alone, so that raised 80,000. I think in total for the entire campaign it was $180,000. It was the best ever 69 Sniffing Brigade campaign to date. This convoy is the largest one that we've done in a handover ever. Over $500,000 worth of equipment going to the Ukrainian armed forces over this weekend.
And you guys made it possible directly. If you know you got one of these patches, then you are very directly responsible for the cars, for the drones, for everything that is happening here today. Let me go into a little bit what do you see here. This here is Needle. Yes, from Game of Thrones, Arya Stark's sword, the Needle, because it stings like a needle. The purpose of this drone is to hunt down Russian electronic warfare units, machinery, equipment. It goes into it explodes in a magnificent way, and then other drones can follow suit because the air is clear, no more jamming. HIMARS, Storm Shadow and precision weapons like that will follow and clean up the job. This drone, my friends, is called Baba Yaga. I would love to say it's from John Wick, the boogeyman, but actually it's an old Slavic fairy tale. It's the Vapnik Slayer. It is the last thing the occupier orcs will see and hear before they are knocked out cold and demilitarized. These drones will liberate Ukraine one tank at a time, one occupier knocked out cold at the time. You guys made this possible, so thank you for it.
This description is exactly about the Needle drone that we delivered to the GUR, and they're already using it on the battlefield, and you guys financed it. You donated 182,000 in December. We bought a lot of Needle drones for that money. We didn't only buy them, we actually developed them. These were the very first prototypes, and now they're active duty on the battlefield. So you have made this very Russian report possible because you delivered presents for the Ukrainians. So thank you, my friends. And stay tuned for my next fundraiser, because I will do it, and it's gonna be even cooler, futuristic R&D for new prototypes and drones. I mean, we're not now buying old drones anymore. We are fundraising to create first in the world prototypes, first in the world capabilities for Ukraine that nobody has yet. So you can be part of that. We're gonna make history, my friends. What you see here, my friends, is a Russian MON-50 directional mine, or a Claymore mine. Let's call it the Claymore mine, because that's what it is. It's a Russian Claymore mine. I want to show you what's the issue with it, because it's connected to the corruption in the army and the procurement money. There's a special term, procurement money, because if you're in the Russian army hierarchy and you're higher up and you're in the procurement field, so you're responsible for acquiring some kind of weaponry or materials, you are doing good, because Putin's money flows through you. And in the system where fish froths from the head and Putin is insanely corrupt, you just get a lot of money for yourself. And then the lower guys on the front, this is what it translates into. Let's look at this. They're brave enough to hit the Claymore with an axe. And what's inside? The pellets, the shrapnel, of course, but no explosives. No explosives at all. Because the explosives were sold or not bought at all by the procurement officer, and I'm not talking a few $100,000 saved. No, we're talking tens of millions. These Russian army contracts, we want to buy 1 million Claymores, Russian MON-50 mines, right? 1 million, well, take 100,000 of them, 1/10 of them, and lose the explosives, they still get the 900,000 ones, and the 100,000 one look the same, but you just don't have explosives. They're not going to take them apart anyway, but this guy gets millions, tens of millions in his pocket of Putin's corruption money. So this is how the Russian corrupt system immediately translates into Russian losses and equipment that doesn't work on the front lines. And somebody up there is getting a lot of money. My friends, look at this photo. This is the European Union influenced by Russian or Putin's propaganda arm. These are the right-wing governments or Putin or Russian money influenced governments in Europe. Now, a lot of the people in Europe who might be voting for these parties, actually, I mean, not governments, sorry, these are the parties who might be voting for these parties, immediately would say, the party has nothing to do with Russia. The values are so different, and these parties are fighting for that specific country. But you know what these parties all have in common? Conflict. Conflict, huge divisional conflict with other parties from any specific country. France, Germany, United Kingdom. Russian export is conflict. They don't export values. They don't export propaganda, they export conflict, and they do that through money and influence. What they do is fund parties in each country. Doesn't have to have anything in common with Russian values, but what they find, what they are searching for, what to fund is the party that is most likely to create the biggest division of peoples in that country. For example, in France or Italy or United Kingdom, they will pick a party that is loved by a minority or one big portion of the population, but it's so extreme that it creates a huge division in that population, and that destabilizes the European democratic zone. Because democracy is very easy to attack through internal divisions. Democracy is people's choice, people elect their representative, but if there is a huge division, then the representatives will fight each other, there's internal conflict, money will be blocked, and the democracy system will be jammed with internal conflict. This is what's going on in the US, because there's a two-party system, and if there's internal conflict, immediately no money, no support goes outside. And this is Russia's goal, that no money and support will go from Europe to Ukraine. So they will fund these parties, don't matter if they're similar or not, they create division, a lot of very strong division in that country. And if you're a voter of one of these parties, then I'm sure you can have a lot of things to blame of all other parties, that they're doing something very wrong. Well, this shows that Russia is doing that very successfully. Huge division in the country due to these parties. So this is what Russia is exporting, and this is how their game works. So if you know there's a party in your country that has the most haters, and it's a very strong, like a cult-like extreme party, well, founded by Russia probably, because they export conflict. Now we have the same thing in Estonia called EKRE, Estonian Conservative People's Party. They are very pro-Estonia. They're Estonian nationalists almost, they're far right. And if you say that Russia is funding them and they're serving Russian interests, the main idea against it is, no, we're pro-Estonia, how can we serve Russian interests? But the thing is, Russia doesn't need agents to serve Russian values. They need agents to create conflict inside a democratic nation. That's the whole main point. So you don't need to have, you can even be far right, far left, wherever you are, religious, non-religious, pro-weed, against weed. If you create conflict and division in a democratic nation, Russia benefits greatly from it. This is Putin's whole plan. Unfortunately, I have to admit that this is genius, and it's propaganda working very great, and European Union is not doing much against it. Russian clause, disinformation clause, and the ability to cause division and conflict within European zone is unfortunately, they're doing it effectively. And European countries are having these internal struggles. They're not blaming Russia at all. They're not even seeing the connection. So Russia is like this puppet master. So I'm here to open some eyes. If you want to listen, if you don't, feel free to continue with the conflict. But know that this only benefits Putin. It doesn't benefit your country if you pick one of those extreme parties. It does not save the country. It will benefit Putin greatly. Now, my friends, there has been a lot of talk in the recent days in the media how Russia is supposedly using Elon Musk's Starlink in occupied Ukrainian territories. Also looking at Elon Musk's tweets in Twitter, I'm sure you've all seen them, they're very, very anti-Ukraine, unfortunately, very anti-Ukraine, and some kind of pro-Russia. Now, I am very pro-Ukraine, I'm very pro-European Union, I'm very pro-democracy. I'm from Estonia. And seeing these tweets, I have a lot of feelings against Elon Musk, because these tweets are very disrespectful and minimizing Ukrainian casualties and suffering in Ukraine. But the thing is, which I cannot ignore at all, is that Ukrainian army, especially the drone branches of the army, which I aid through your donations greatly, were able to do most of what they do thanks to Elon Musk's Starlink. And I'm aware that he blackmailed, or whatever you want to call it, a lot of money from the United States government by saying we will switch off Starlink. But my sources in certain branches of the Ukrainian hierarchy of the army, I cannot name any names, but very high up sources of the hierarchy have been telling me that Starlink is extremely vital, and Elon Musk has not turned it off at all, ever. So it's all Western media play that this was turned off. They tell me Starlink works perfectly, and never has it been turned off, and they rely greatly on it. So as much as I hate to see these Elon Musk's pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian tweets, as a drone procurement guy, I cannot ignore his Starlink system effectiveness in Ukraine. That's all I wanted to say. Now I'll read you a tweet from Ilya Ponomarenko. This is about Polish farmers protesting Ukrainian grain exports into the EU, because Ukrainian grain is responsible for a huge proportion of Ukrainian export and the money coming in and the money paid to the soldiers, but it devalues Polish farmers' grain prices, because Poland is a very agricultural country and their farmers are suffering greatly because Ukrainian grain is flooding the European market. And it's a very difficult situation because Poland, politically, and the people, most Polish people really do support Ukraine insanely. They're fanatical supporters. They understand the Russian aggression better than most. But the thing is, the farmers have been blockading Ukrainian borders because they are losing money directly thanks to Ukrainian grain being on the European market. So they don't want the grain there. But Ukraine has a lot of grain, and if Ukraine is accepted into the EU, then that will devalue Polish agricultural output and the prices will go cheaper. So the Polish farmers have a lot to say against Ukraine joining the EU and exporting the grain into the EU. And Ilya Ponomarenko, a thought leader in Ukraine, I will read what he thinks about it. Ukraine is fighting for its very existence, tries to keep the shadows of its war-ruined economy afloat, get as much money as possible to run its wartime budget, and we have this. We got our bread, one of the most sacred things to the Ukrainian culture, desecrated this way by a bunch of pro-Russian thugs. So Polish farmers poured Ukrainian grain on the border points to show their protest that they don't want that grain to flood the Polish and the European markets because they will lose money and they cannot feed their children. Now, Ilya Ponomarenko calls them pro-Russian thugs. Now, here again, I would take a more balanced view against it. I am pro-Ukraine in any way. I'm pro-Poland in any way. And I do understand both nations. If you're a farmer, you do rely solely on your income and the feeding of your family and paying your mortgage on the export price of your grain that you grow on your fields. Now, the Polish farmers and the farmers in all of the EU have been protesting recently because they have issues with it. It's really difficult to be a farmer. You work a lot, but you get the minimum profits because the big companies who buy the grain, they get the most of profits. So if Ukrainian grain would go to Poland and the EU, then the Polish farmers would lose a lot of money, and that makes their lives so much more difficult. So they have to choose between their families being fed and helping Ukraine, and of course they choose their family. So I would not call them pro-Russia in any sentence, in any way. I do understand the Poland's farmer situation, but I do also see the need for Ukraine to export their grain into the EU, which is paying more than Northern African countries, for Ukraine to be able to pay their soldiers. So it's a very difficult situation. But I'm just opening up the situation. It's not black and white. You Polish farmers in no way are pro-Russian. They're just trying to feed their families, and this is a conflict that will happen. You cannot avoid it. These two countries, Poland and Ukraine, need to be very knowledgeable how to navigate these millions of farmers who are fighting for their rights. Now, my friends, we'll look at the military map of Avdiivka because, as I mentioned, the next 2 weeks they will be crucial for Avdiivka because Russians are in from the north in the urbanized area, they're in the south from the urbanized area, and Ukraine is doubling down. Now, we were all waiting what Ukraine does, what General Syrskyi, new chief of staff, does. Will he pull out? Will he try to save Ukrainian lives, or will he double down and try to force Russians into losing more men? And now we know that he's doubling down because Ukraine now sent reinforcements into Avdiivka area, focusing on counteroffensives, local counteroffensives to push back these Russian salients into Avdiivka's urbanized area. Now, if you're surrounded from three sides from the enemy artillery and mortars and you have infantry in Avdiivka, this will result in huge losses for Ukraine. Russians are always taking huge losses, but they don't care and they don't count. Ukraine therefore cares and counts, and for them it means much more to lose these troops. So, Syrskyi doubling down. I am quite sure now this is also a political order. Like for the Russians, Putin orders take Avdiivka. Then for Ukrainians, Zelensky orders keep Avdiivka, hold Avdiivka. Both of these orders are political and very deadly for the armed forces of Russia and Ukraine. Now we see that Ukrainians are also doubling down, and this will result in more losses, so you know what to expect in the coming days. Russians will lose more and Ukrainians will lose more. If reinforcements are sent, and they were sent, this means we're not seeing the pulling out of Avdiivka so fast as I was expecting it. This means Ukrainians are doubling down, they're keeping their heels in the ground and eliminating as many Russians as possible before they give away the city. Now, my friends, we'll look at NATO countries' military GDP compared to the entire output of the country. And it's very important, and I'm sad to see this. And I'm proud about my country in this list, but still sad to see this. To be in NATO, the requirement is that 2% of your entire country's output and GDP goes to military. And now let's look at this chart. This is 2015. Greece is leading with 3.5%, United States 3.46%, Lithuania, Poland, United Kingdom, Estonia and Latvia. So we see the Baltics and Poland. All of these countries have experience with Russian aggression, so they have no illusions and they invest in the military. And these are only, in the yellow here, these are the countries that are over 2% because they are following the NATO guidelines and have no illusions about Russia. Rest of the countries in NATO, these are the countries that are the issue. These are the issue countries in NATO because they are the reason why European militaries are so defunded and so, let's put it frankly, they're weak. They're extremely weak. So these countries are the reason. If you represent one of these countries, then you know what to do with your government. It's a democratic nation. You can choose who to vote for. And if a politician says we're going to raise the spending, military spending, that's your politician. Now let's go to 2023. The numbers are different and I'm glad to see that the defense spending has increased after the full-scale invasion. But still, if you're a French citizen, then what's up? Why is this not 4%? We have a very aggressive, the biggest country in the world next to Schengen area in Europe, and countries are sleeping. These countries are in deep sleep. And we in Estonia have to spend 2.7 and it still doesn't do because we don't have that much money. We're still putting 2.7. Luckily, we have Poland. Look at this. 3.9%. Thank you, Poland. If you're a Polish farmer or a Polish citizen, thank you for electing the people into the government who are making these decisions because you guys are doing it right. We will follow suit. And I do hope the rest of Europe picks up the slack because it's a huge problem. We are carrying the rest of Europe on our backs right now. Now, my friends, I just want to show you a couple of pictures. These are extremely mobile, extremely fast moving and cheap way to take down Shahed drones. Of course, they're not high tech, they're not precision. They're just 50 caliber Browning on the back of a pickup truck. It's a tripod stand lamp and they also have a laser finder for the drone, and as simple as it is, you find a drone, you aim your Browning at it a little bit in front of it, you go, actually Browning is like, and you shoot down the drone, that's it. And Ukraine has hundreds of these crews because every time I'm in Kiev, we get the explosions, we get the Shahed attacks, and I'm sleeping 6 a.m. I hear these explosions. I know these cries on the photos are doing the work, just exporting 50 caliber freedom onto the Shahed drone. So yeah, these guys are the heroes, saving Ukrainian lives. But now, my friends, I'll show you a video. This Browning, very cheap and fast, improvised anti-Shahed system is the first layer of defense. The last layer of defense is a Patriot, and they will never use a Patriot to take down a Shahed. But what's in between is this. It's a missile system converted from Hydra 70 missiles. One Hydra 70 rocket costs 2,500 USD. It is equipped with a laser finder, laser targeter, and put into also a back of the pickup truck. The shooter has 4 missiles in it, rockets, sorry. And they find a Shahed, and this is how it goes. They're keeping the targets on it. It's automatically keeping it on. You can see the shooting in about a few seconds. Strela, shooting, okay, the missile went out, or the rocket, sorry. This here is the rocket, cost 2,000 USD. The Shahed cost a few 100,000 if you look at the Russian numbers that were leaked. And now, boom, hit it. And you can see Shahed is going down. And this is the plane falling down, yeah, Shahed. And boom, it went to the ground and exploded. So using the Hydra rockets, the laser rangefinders and some other modulations on it, the cost goes up to 20k per piece. One Shahed costs a few $100,000. So Ukraine has cheap and cost-effective ways in the thousands. The ammunition is in the thousands to take down these Shaheds. Russia cannot overwhelm expensive Western ammunition with Shaheds. Now, my friends, my favorite part of the video, which is butchering the Patreon names. If you're a sergeant of Artur's army, that means tier 10 or above, I'll be butchering your name in the most horrible way, horrendous way possible that will haunt you for the rest of your existence. Here we go, my friends, new Patreons. Arpat Matta. Enorma Stids, welcome. Martin Gilbertson, Nicolas Canal, Igor Kotjuskhan, Doug Kosmin, Vector Productions, Alan Rickardson. Thank you for these people, and they are the reason, the security net that allows me to do what I do, that allows me not to worry about this stuff, and I can focus my entire energy and being to you, helping Ukraine. You guys make it possible, as you made the Needle and the Baba Yaga possible, and Kamikaz drones. You guys make a lot of difference actually through this channel. So keep an eye on it, and until my next video, which will be tomorrow, Slava Ukraini, and bye bye.